This week, I am hopelessly flawed. Those are the words that Louisa May Alcott wrote in her book, Little Women, and that Joe says in the movie, the 1995 portrayal. She is played by Winona Ryder. This week, I am hopelessly flawed. What can I say? Blocks 21, 22, 23, and 24 are coming up. This week, my blocks have a lot of flaws, but nobody's perfect. I will call them my humble blocks, my happy mistakes, but we all need these types of blocks. 2 turned out pretty good. The other 2 I'm not happy with, but I'm not going to rip them out either, and you could probably guess which ones they were. We celebrated President's Day this last weekend, a week ago today, basically. And I was reminded of a trip I took to New England. I visited, this says February of 2007. I visited the Bennington, Vermont Museum, and I bought this little book called George Washington's Rules of Civility and Decent Behaviors in Company and in Conversation. This little book has been a reminder to me of how we need to be civil to one another, how we need to treat each other with kindness, and know that there are always problems in our lives and how to deal with them and how to deal with others. But one of these struck me really well this week as I was reading this book. The 8th, it's number 8. At play and at fire, it is good manners to give place to the last comer, and affect not to speak louder than ordinary. I consider myself a fairly quiet person. I've mentioned in many of my other videos that I am an introvert. But this week I had an occasion where I was walking in a very spiritual place to me, and an elderly gentleman, probably in his 80s, 85 maybe, as my mother and I walked by, he stood up from his chair. And I thought that was such a kind gesture on his behalf. I was touched by it. I don't know the gentleman's name, but I nodded my head and I said thank you. It was just a very kind gesture to me. And with President's Day, I also had the opportunity to visit a small local library here in the area where I'm staying. And I bought a book for 25 cents, A Mirror for Greatness, 6 Americans, and it's written by Bruce Bliver. It is the story of 6 Americans who were great in their capacities, let's say. They overcame their problems and trials and just hardships of the day. Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Sojourner Truth, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and Henry David Thoreau. This book, I started to read it. This book reminds me of a book that I read 2 or 3 years ago from my library back home where I am from. And I loved it so much I bought it. It's called Lead Yourself First, Inspiring Leadership Through Solitude. And from what I'm getting from this book, sometimes we have to go and spend time by ourselves to think through problems. And this book is written by Raymond M. Kethridge and Michael S. Irwin. And this book I highly recommend. I haven't even looked on Amazon or anything to see if this one is still available, but it's turning out to be just as good a read as this one was. So great leaders at our past, great presidents that we had. This week, however, though, let me start. This one turned out great. This is number 21. this away, I believe it's called. Just a paper piece block. 22. I can't remember what this one called. This one is not one of my favorites. These points right here are supposed to be more of a contrast, and they're not. But that's where I am flawed. I thought they would be more of a contrast. Maybe if I pull it further away or put it closer up, you can see it. I wanted them to be a little bit more contrasting, and they weren't, but it's okay. A humble block. I'm gonna have lots of humble blocks in this quilt. The next one, I think, it's going to be a challenge for many. Maybe just for me, I don't know. See how wide this is down here? This was, if I had to do this block again, I wouldn't. I'd pick another one to do. This is not for beginning appliqueurs even. I don't know what I did wrong, but these weren't spaced out enough to hide the directions in the book. Anyway, I was not about ready to rip this all out and do it again. So I just put a longer piece on the bottom. It's okay, I'm okay with it. But it's just not my favorite block at all. These are all appliqué. There was 13 of them. And it came out. It's gonna stay just like it is. And it is what it is. Hopelessly flawed. The last one is called Suspenders. And this one reminds me, back home, I have a lot of Amish neighbors. And this one reminds me of them. It reminds me of the Amish young men, the boys, the men who wear suspenders. I just love this block. It's very contrasting. It said navy in the book. I did mine in blacks and whites. And I do love it for the simplicity that it is. And it does remind me of my Amish neighbors. So as you can tell, these two are my favorite. These two are my flawed blocks. They're okay. They're just not my favorite. So with that, because I am such a dark chocolate fiend, I found two types of chocolate here in my local Albertsons. Dark chocolate with raspberries has got to be my favorite top of the line treat. 1 square of this per day, maybe 3 times a week. Love dark chocolate. And this one is almond, sea salt, and dark chocolate. Another favorite of mine is sea salt and dark chocolate with almonds in it. But this brand is called Endangered Species Chocolate. Both of them are 72%. There's enough here to last me for a month. But think about solitude this week as we do blocks 21, 22, 23, and 24. And this week was unique in that we did a applique and a paper piece block all in the same week. So have fun with it. If you don't have to do number 23, I wouldn't. Just opinion.